I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where I consult, teach, coach, and speak on the applied science and bewitchery of brand and business storytelling, so that you can clarify your story to amplify your impact and simplify your life.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Hi, and welcome back to the Business of Story. Park Howell here, and I am so glad you're with us today. And by the way, just to put this in your head before we get going, if you like what you hear on today's show, feel free to share it with a friend, family member, colleague, anybody who you think needs to clarify their story, to amplify their impact, and simplify their life. That's what we're here for you. And today we have a special guest, Jon Ferrara, from the CEO, founder of Nimble CRM. And he has been working through his story cycle system to clarify the brand story at Nimble. And our good friend Lisa Leffler put this up together for me a few months ago. And I've worked with Jon a little bit in this process, but they really have tackled it through the DIY workbook, mostly themselves. And of course, I would pop in here and there from that outside perspective, looking in and challenge some of their thinking and look at some of the opportunities ahead of them. But Jon has been kind enough to join us today to talk about the experience they have had and how this has helped them shape and guide and clarify the Nimble story, ultimately to amplify their impact in the world and simplify your life as a Nimble owner. So with that, let me bring on Jon, and we're going to go through his amazing background quickly. Probably best just to hear it from him because he has tremendous background in this area in bringing technology to help our lives, especially as small businesses, solopreneurs, small work groups, to help us get better at what we do without tripping over and stumbling over customer relationship management systems, which can be confusing, which can be annoying, which can be hard to implement. I found Nimble to be just the opposite of that. So without further ado, Jon, welcome to the Business of Story.
Park, I'm so happy to be here with you today and your audience. But more importantly, I'm so grateful to you to facilitate us in refining our story of Nimble and to be able to put our customers, our constituency at the center of that story and turn them into heroes. I love you. I love your process. And I'm grateful for your assistance.
Oh, thanks for that, Jon. This has been fun. And folks, so you know that Nimble is not a paying client. I'm not in here selling their products on their behalf. But we got together just to say, hey, if you would go through this process, then would you share what you experienced with the world? So this is not a 1-hour commercial for Nimble. Rather, it's what can you learn from their journey through this process that you can apply to you and your brand story. So, Jon, you are not new to the CRM world. Can you give our listeners a little bit of background of what you did earlier in life, how you sold that company, really didn't have to work again, but then how you wanted to jump back in to help people like me succeed?
You bet. So I guess you can call me an accidental entrepreneur in that I never planned to start a company, although my dad and my uncle were both entrepreneurs and I grew up in an entrepreneurial environment. My dad was a car dealer and my uncle helped invent radar and microwave at MIT and was a aerospace entrepreneur. But it wasn't until I bought my first computer in 1978 that I really found my passion, plan, and purpose in life. And it's technology. I love using and finding new use cases of technology. And I never wanted to be in sales, but after spending 2 years in aerospace, after getting my computer science degree, I figured out that I needed to try something other than aerospace. And I got a job at a startup technology company, first as a systems engineer and then in sales. In the process of trying to sell myself or trying to be a salesperson myself, I found that the sales process was broken. Now, this was 1987 and 88. There was no Outlook. There was no Salesforce. There was no term CRM. There was email and there was calendaring, but none of that tied to contacts.
There were barely computers back then. I mean, I remember 1987, 88. I was new in the advertising world, and a fax machine was considered, forward-reaching technology.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they were luggable computers, but there wasn't anything like what we have today. But what I was looking for is something that I could take my leads and turn those connections into conversations and ultimately into relationships and ultimately not into revenue, but into a mutually beneficial, measurable business outcome. Because I think that service is the new selling and that, bagging and tagging people is not really conducive to my philosophy of relationships. But I couldn't find a tool that integrated email, contact and calendar, and sales and market automation. So I quit my job and started a company called Goldmine. We started that in 1989, and it was the first networkable team tool that integrated email, contact, and calendar like Outlook does today, but there was no Outlook, and sales and market automation like Salesforce today, but there was no Salesforce or CRM. And so we kind of invented contact management and CRM at the same time. So how do two kids in an apartment in Canoga Park with $5,000 in the bank sell software globally? And so I struggled with that for a while, trying to sell direct. But then I figured out that the easiest way to sell to a business owner is through their trusted advisor. And if a business bought a Novell network to tie together PCs and hard drives and printers, the best person to sell them a software to run on top of that is the person that sold them the network. So I basically cold called the top 500 Novell resellers in the US and got them to use Goldmine because people sell what they know what to use. And we got them to start using it and selling it. And that's how we got to our first $100,000 a month in revenue without spending a dime on marketing and without taking any venture capital.
What was the biggest pushback that you had experienced back then? So here you are, you're new at this, you've got a lot of time and money invested in Goldmine, and you start picking up the phone and making these cold calls. What kind of pushback would you get? Because essentially you were inventing an industry at that point.
It was the story, Park. Honestly, I mean, we needed to create a story that fit in people's heads. And I read this book called Positioning by Reese and Trout.
Oh yeah,
and it's easier to build off an idea in somebody's head than to create a net new idea. And so we started calling Goldmine originally a work group contact manager because people understand their contacts. And eventually we helped really define what CRM was. And what's interesting is that we eventually became Microsoft's #1 ISV because Microsoft doesn't.
What's an ISV?
It's an independent software vendor.
Okay.
So Microsoft doesn't innovate. They iterate. They wait for somebody else to build the market, and then they come in when it's big enough. And they basically ate Novell by coming out with NT Server, SQL Server, and Exchange Server. And we utilize those platforms in order to build an enterprise version of Goldmine, thereby becoming their #1 ISV because if you bought Goldmine, you need to buy a seat of SQL Server, Exchange Server, and NT Server for every user. And thereby, we help basically put SQL Server, Exchange Server on the map and ultimately had 50 of the Fortune 500 as corporate customers, corporate-wide, got to about $100 million in revenue. And I sold it 10 years later when I was 40 years old.
1999, right before
1999.
Okay.
Yep.
And so you sold it. You didn't have to work again. You had more money in your pocket than you could ever imagine at the age of 40. What'd you do then?
So, well, first off, my wife kicked me out of the house because I don't know if you've ever met an entrepreneur, Park, but they're not fun to have in a house, especially if you've had the house to yourself for a while. And so I had to find something to do. And besides being a dad and volunteering in the classrooms and volunteering in my community, which was really a precious gift, Park. I mean, you're a dad, you know what it's like to be able to be connected and close to your family, but you also need something to do. So I started mountain bike riding like 5 days a week, and got in really great shape. But I went back to school and got a degree in photography and got really good at taking pictures. And I shot SC football for 10 years from the sidelines.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, from like Carson Palmer to Sanchez and everybody in between. And I also remodeled my house, which was, it's an old 1920s house I bought from Jack Nicholson back in the day. And that took me a few years to do that. And
wait a minute, you bought Jack Nicholson's old house?
Yes.
So that's got to have some cool ghosts in it, I'd imagine.
Well, the funny thing is he bought the house for his daughter, and then he had his ex-wife who lived kitty corner across the street. So there's some interesting stories there. But what's interesting? Seeing pictures, when I walk through the house of Jack as a dad, because you don't really picture Jack as a dad, right? He's Jack, but it was just touching to see him holding his daughter on his lap and having that dad look. But one of the other things I did is I got a head tumor a year after I sold Goldmine and almost died, and I share that with you for a few reasons. Number one is your life is a gift and you don't know when it will end. And your job, I believe, is on our planet is to grow your soul by helping other people grow theirs. I derived that after I was able to heal from my tumor. And so I learned some really precious lessons in life in a very short period of time. And that's why I dedicated the next 10 years to being a present dad and husband. And ultimately dedicating my life to helping other people achieve their dreams and to grow their souls. And I think that that's what ultimately led me back to software, because I started using social media in 2006, 7, and 8. And I saw how it was going to change the way we work, play, buy, and sell. And I started to look for a platform that would enable me to integrate my social listening and connections and contacts to the conversations. And I found Hootsuite, which did a really good job of unifying the signals, the conversations, but didn't tie it to the contacts. Then I started looking at contact management, and I found G Suite Gmail, but email, contact, and calendar are 3 separate programs. And ultimately, you want email and calendar connected to contacts, and ideally the social as well. And so I saw that contact management was broken. And then I looked at CRM and saw that CRM isn't really about relationships, even though the R in CRM stands for relationship, customer relationship management. It's really about reporting. So the funny thing is the reason they call it Salesforce, you have to force salespeople to use it. Nobody in their right mind would use a CRM if they weren't beat on to do it. And I think you shouldn't work for your CRM by having to Google somebody and go log what you know and log what you did. Your CRM should work for you by building itself automagically from the contacts that you and your team have in your business, which is Gmail, G Suite, and now Office or iCloud, and then Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and any of the business apps that you have. And so I set out to reimagine relationship management by building Nimble, the first CRM that works for you by building itself, and then works with you wherever you work, because I think that having enriched contacts helps you to enrich your relationships, which in the end will enrich your life.
Mm-hmm. And it comes down to that word. We'll get to that here in a minute. And I think an important point to point out here is this idea that CRM, we are told, meant in the old days customer relationship management. But to your point, it wasn't relationship management. It's, as you said, reporting management. I can report who do I talk to and where it is, where they are, and where you can find them in my database. But there wasn't a lot of relationship being built through that.
And I want to actually delve into that part because I think there's an important lesson there. Goldmine was Salesforce and Outlook combined before either existed, which means that the whole company lived in Goldmine, not just salespeople. And it was more than prospects and customers that were in the database, because the constituency that you touch around your business, well, the constituency that we touch at Nimble is editors, analysts, bloggers, influencers, third-party developers, investors, advisors, and prospects and customers. And everybody in the company participates in that journey. So there needs to be a team relationship manager. Back in the Goldmine days, we were Salesforce and Outlook, but as Outlook was introduced, it became the place for email and contacts. And then the CRM was a place where you manage your pipeline, and that became Salesforce. So ultimately, the relationships were managed in Outlook, and the logging of the pipeline was managed in Salesforce. And today, with the introduction of social, you're not just managing relationships and email, you're managing relationships wherever you can effectively listen and engage, where your customers are having conversations, to set yourself up as a trusted advisor. So when they make a buying decision, they not only pick up the phone and call you, but they drag their friends with them. And today's CRM systems aren't designed for that. They're basically designed for you to log your tasks and activities, to compare against the leads, to be able to compare against the closed business in the pipeline, so that management understands what's going on. But then you need to go buy all these tools to build relationships like sales intelligence and email tracking and blah, blah, blah.
Just even having you describe that makes my mind hurt. And I don't know if that's the way the listeners are either. Most of us, and I know that group that you really target, are small companies, solopreneurs, or small work groups within large enterprises that have a lot. We all have a lot on our plate. We're spinning lots of plates in that case. And we don't have time to mess around with a CRM. It's too confusing, and try to connect all of these different pieces. So let's jump in and let's get rolling on your brand story, on how we can clarify not only the Nimble story, but kind of the story of the CRM world in the process, because you could be a leader in that area. And what it does is it simply reflects the ethos behind Nimble, a CRM that grows with you where you are organically by itself without you having to do a lot. So you literally, your promise to us folks out here using it is you are going to simplify our lives through the Nimble process and really build customer relationship management that works. Fair enough?
Perfect.
So let's do this. Let's start the backstory. We always start in chapter 1 of the backstory. You say, where you been, where you now, where you're going. It just gets the brand, the leadership to be kind of thinking about, where you've been, where you are right now, and where you really need to be headed. And so you've given us this nice backstory of you and the company. Let's break it down to these 4 areas. We always start at this high level area, 50,000 feet. Jon, what industry does Nimble operate in?
So Nimble is a software manufacturer. We build relationship management software. And so we're a technology company. We're a software vendor, and we build relationship systems. And I say relationship systems to differentiate from CRM, because I actually think that CRM is a 4-letter word. And most people hate their CRM. And so even though we use it to talk about ourselves, because you need to be close to where people search, we're really a platform that helps people achieve their dreams.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So we'll get to that right now. What we want to be thinking about is functionally, what does Nimble do better than anybody else, different and therefore better than anybody else in your competitive circle. And so let's start with the industry, very 50,000 foot level. You're literally in business services, as I am, as many, many people are. Your category, though, within business services is relationship management and influencer management. So we're starting to now come out of this 50,000 foot level and get down a little bit closer to the trenches. So your specialty within that category is SaaS, CRM, sales intelligence through your system. And then you'd say your number one specialty, or your position statement, what you might do better than anyone else. You guys have written up a couple, 3 here. Do you want to share one of yours? And then I just took the liberty of tweaking it a little bit on my end. You haven't heard it yet. I'd love to bounce it off of you, and then we can decide which one you think works better.
You bet. So I think that we actually make people's lives better, because we help them achieve their dreams by building rich relationships with people that matter, that help them achieve them. And ultimately, I think that relationships are critical to your life success, and that your brand and your network are the 2 things that are going to help you get there. And that Nimble is really designed to help you to build and manage your, what I call the golden Rolodex, your network, and to nurture that network so that it actually helps you to achieve your dreams.
Okay, so we are going to move to that too, but let me bounce this one off you. And again, this is functionally without the romance. This is like just right, where does the rubber meet the road and what do you do differently and therefore better? And I wrote, Nimble is the simplest and most dynamic customer relationship management platform for individuals, small companies, and internal teams. Boom, just leave it at that.
Yeah, I like that.
You are the simplest, most dynamic. And when you start using this, folks, when you start using words like simplest and most dynamic, they don't mean a ton right here. But what it enables you to do, and Jon and his team to do, is later on in the process to start filling those terms, simplest and most dynamic, with meaning in the stories they tell, in how Nimble operates. So let's just say that again. Nimble is the simplest and most dynamic customer relationship management platform for individuals, small companies, and internal teams. So we've got your audiences there, what it does, and we got to work from a field, an area of familiarity. People know what customer relationship management is, or at least they think they do, so that we can get them in that category, even though good brand positioning is going to tweak that a little bit later, and we do that in the process. So if we can live with that, Jon, then let's move into chapter 2, which is called Who's Your Hero? And the big paradigm shift here for so many brands, it still surprises me, is the brand is not the hero. The brand plays a more important role downstream as the mentor guide. But in this case, who are your top 3 audiences that Nimble is talking to and helping?
So I think number one are individuals or solopreneurs and consultants and fast-growing businesses that are looking for an all-in-one cloud sales and marketing solution that can help them scale. Number 2 is small business teams working in together that are looking for a single relationship platform that will help them cultivate relationships. And number 3 is the influencer of our prospect, the channel partners and resellers that really help businesses digitally transform and convert into modern social sales and marketing practices. Because ultimately, for Nimble to scale, we can't sell direct to the individuals, small businesses, and work groups and larger companies. We need to basically create apostles out there, just like we did in the goldmine days. In the goldmine days, we started with Novell resellers and then switched over to Microsoft resellers as Microsoft ate Novell. With Nimble, we started with Gmail, G Suite, Google resellers, and ultimately added Microsoft as they have now eaten G Suite with Office 365.
Mm-hmm. So who Nimble is for, first and foremost, on a consumer segment then, are those solopreneurs to small teams, 1 to 15 people, roughly, something like that. And they could be either running their own companies, it could be a lean startup, it could, anything outside of a large organization, or you're tackling that entrepreneurial spirit and team spirit within a large enterprise and saying, look, we know you may already have Salesforce and these other things, but you need an easier, more nimble way to keep your contacts and your team together inside some large enterprise. Is that right?
Yeah. But I'd probably say it's individuals and teams of 2 to 25 that occur in small, medium, large, and enterprise companies. Because even in an enterprise company, they don't have the resources to go hire a consultant and pay for Salesforce or Dynamics CRM and then implement it for 6 months in order to get something out of it. They have a business need, they have contacts they want to connect to, and they want something more nimble.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right, then we move into what's at stake, and you just kind of explain what that is. This is chapter 3, when in the story cycle system, where you start getting your head around what are both the physical and philosophical needs of your audience that you, in this case, Nimble, takes care of. So physically, what do you provide people, and what problem are you helping them overcome? And then answer philosophically. Internally in their brains, what are they benefiting from? How do they feel this benefit?
Well, I think that today, as a business, the first thing you do is you get a domain, then you set up a website, then you need email. In the old days, it was POP and IMAP. Today, your choice is G Suite, Gmail, or Office 365. And once you get those things, Office or G Suite, you're really missing a team relationship manager, and you're missing a tool that helps you to do simple social sales and marketing. And I think that our audience feels that need because they don't have a team relationship platform. And to do simple sales and marketing, they have to go out and buy too many tools and spend too much, and it's too complex to run. And so what we're doing is we're providing those individuals and teams with a relationship platform that is both simple, smart, and yet powerful, that can grow with them, even to the point of working with anything that they grow into. So many of our customers don't have anything. They use email or spreadsheets for their contacts. They start with Nimble, but then as their needs grow, they might add something like maybe a HubSpot or even a Salesforce. And in those cases, Nimble can work within those. And I think that that's one of the reasons why Microsoft has deemed us as strategic, because not only do we help sell Office and make it sticky, but we're a gateway to their crown jewels of Azure and Dynamics. And so it's interesting that Microsoft signed a resale agreement with us to resell Nimble globally with Office, even though they have a CRM, because we fit a strategic niche of enabling Microsoft resellers to transform themselves into modern practices that use social sales and marketing, and then start selling solutions on top of Office, which then grow into selling key things Microsoft wants to sell.
Yeah, I mean, it can get to the point that we can just totally Frankenstein ourselves out of business by trying to do the right things around customer relationship management. But what I hear you talking about in your customers is maybe two real emotional problems, challenges that you help people overcome is frustration. Number one, I got all this stuff running. I don't have time for this. How do I make it work? And then FOMO, the fear of missing out. What leads am I missing out on? Where are my hottest opportunities? Because for some reason, well, I know the reason. There's just too many things coming in all at one time. I've got email to contend with. I've got calendar to contend with. I got my social channels linked in to contend with. And how do I orchestrate those all into one place? Or I guess as your software does, how can it orchestrate it for me so that then I can go to a database that actually makes sense to me and I can easily pick through it and hit the prospects that are my lowest hanging fruit, that are the hottest.
And you know, one thing I want to point out from what you just said there is, yes, Nimble does auto-magically build your relationship system.
Auto-magically, yep.
Either for you or your team, because ultimately I think we all should have our own golden Rolodex. We all need our own personal CRM. But for a team aspect, it not only builds it, but then it lets you use those contacts wherever you're working. Because in the Goldmine days, you lived in Goldmine. And when I first built Nimble, I envisioned people to live in Nimble because we had all the integrations with Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and you could do everything in one place. But the reality is that you can't live in one place in today's world. You need to be wherever your customers are having conversations. So conversations might start in a software in Twitter and then shift to a LinkedIn connection and then an email and a calendar appointment. And then if you're doing things right, face-to-face, but ultimately to take that relationship from a business connection into a real relationship, capital REAL, you need to move beyond the business connections to an intimate relationship where you're sharing commonalities, building intimacy and trust, and developing a real friendship with that person. And you connect in the 5 F's of life: family, friend, food, fun, and fellowship. And those things happen in places like Facebook and Instagram. And so no CRM is designed to integrate all that, let alone work back in those places. So as the relationship and the conversation shifts from Twitter to LinkedIn to email to calendar back to Facebook and Instagram, you could bring that contact with you to always know who they are. That's insights, what their business is about, insights, and then the history of interactions that you and the team have had, context. But most importantly, the ability to follow up and follow through, because that's the biggest cause of failure of business. People don't do what they say they're going to do because they have to go to their CRM to do it. Nimble is the first CRM that works for you by building itself and then works with you wherever you're working. And I think that's the magic of what we've built.
Well, and some of your word use I really love, Jon, and I encourage this with other leaders too, to have fun. You're auto-magically. Some people might roll their eyes at it. Personally, I love that sort of thing. Relationships, those kinds of things, because it starts positioning you as a much more you, and this is the ubiquitous you and your brand out there, is a much more human, approachable thing. You and I had talked before we went live here, and you had said you believe in a higher vibration. And what, number one, does that mean to you? Number two, is that something that you've always had, or did it come from your challenges you had with your brain tumor and realize how precious life is? And number three, how do you think it is expressed through Nimble?
So I love those questions, Park, because I feel like you really see me, hear me, and feel me. And that me, I don't think was created necessarily in this lifetime by my experiences and challenges that I've had, although it's been refined. I believe that my soul is a spirit or energy that has been in a continuum, and that this moment on the planet that I'm in is just that moment. And I've developed my philosophy over time through reading a variety of different things voraciously. But ultimately, I came to the conclusion that we're on this planet to grow our souls by helping other people grow theirs through a lifetime of experiences, including, studying alternative religions, etc. But it was really refined when I was going through my healing process, where I went on a spiritual journey and really got deeper into my meditation and yoga practices. But ultimately, I believe that whenever you are connected to another person, you should be as present as possible and listen to find ways to add value, even if it's simply gifting them with your presence and a smile. And the moments of those connections create vibrations. And in the end, that's all you leave this planet with, is the moments you've been truly present and connected, and ideally blew wind in their sails. And all of that is the vibrations of the moments that you create and that you leave this planet with. And in the end, they don't basically say, John Ferrara, entrepreneur, built 2 global technology companies. They say, on my grave, beloved friend, father, brother, sister, husband, dad. And that's all life's really about. I think that we're not on this planet to make money, but we're on this planet to make moments out of memories, or memories out of moments. And that's really why I got back in the business, is because I want to power millions of people around the world to achieve their dreams. And that's what Nimble is really designed to. And ultimately, that's the heart of its persona, if you will. It's if you think about Salesforce, it's the enterprise bag and tag tool, whereas Nimble is the relationship platform that helps you to connect at scale to add value to others at scale. Because, like Zig Ziglar said, you can get anything you want in life by helping other people get what they want in life. And most people don't know that they really need to grow as a human being. But if you could help people to do that at scale, Park, it's amazing. When people stop me on the street and say, John, you've changed my life, it's I know how Mick Jagger feels when he's on stage and people are looking at him and screaming at him. And I'll have to tell you the story about meeting Mick Jagger at my ear, nose, and throat doctor one day. But I think that
wait a minute. Well, you've got to tell us that story.
Okay.
You can't just leave that out there.
So when I discovered I had this big red strawberry in the back of my throat, the tumor, I went to my ENT, and he basically facilitated me getting an MRI and going to UCLA Medical Center and getting my treatments and everything. So I started to see him periodically for follow-ups. He happens to be Frank Sinatra, Whitney Houston, blah, blah, blah doctor. So he basically does everybody, Michael Jackson. And this was back when they were all alive. But he also does Mick Jagger. And so, they put you on these cubicles that you go in these little rooms and then they dance between them. So when they're done, you walk out, and I bumped into this old man. And I looked down at him and I said, shit, you're Mick Jagger. And I thought to myself, you're old and you're short. and then I thought to myself, I mean, it's funny how much you think in like literally milliseconds. I thought to myself, why does this old man get up on stage 100 times a year all over the world? Clearly, he doesn't need the money. And then I said to myself, he does it because he loves the dance.
Mm-hmm.
Loves the dance of powering people. And he feeds on that energy. And I love the dance of powering people. And I'll be honest, I feed on that energy. And I hope you hear the energy from my voice, is that I really believe that I'm a teacher and a preacher. And I have a philosophy about selling nimble, that if you teach people to fish, they'll figure out yourself fishing poles. So rather than me telling them how great nimble is, I basically teach them how they could be great, because I think people buy a better version of themselves. They don't buy great products.
You're exactly right. It's not what you make, but what you make happen in their lives.
Mm.
You had mentioned another term, a colloquialism of yours that I liked when we spoke a couple weeks ago, and you said your network in this day and age is your net worth. And how we are so uberly connected around the world. For instance, I get speaking gigs, and they're really great for my business. I love to get out and work with people and so forth. Most of those speaking gigs will come through SEO. They will have found me through Business Storyteller or Storytelling, whatever. Then go to my website, hit FormStack, fill out a FormStack, get it to me, and I get it in my email. So here are 3 or 4 fairly, unhuman touch points for them until I can finally get on the phone with them. And it's once I get on the phone is when, of course, you really start building that relationship. So I could be doing that with Infusionsoft. I can be doing it with your other competitors. How do you make that ultimately easier for me?
Well, I think the problem with most other CRMs or marketing tools is that it's just a dead record that's the heart of the system, whether it's the marketing system or the sales system.
And by dead record, you mean it's just sitting there. You got into my spreadsheet, and now you're just laying there.
Well, I mean, the record is only as good as the data you type in, and human beings aren't good at typing data in. The biggest cause of failure of CRM is lack of use. The second is bad data. And even if you get people to type in stuff about the people they're connecting to and the businesses that they're selling to, the data would decay like fish. It just rots because people change and companies change. And what's different about Nimble is that we're the first CRM that automatically maps the identity of people and company, brings the data down, and keeps the data up to date.
So when they move and change something, it's automatically updating within Nimble.
Yes, and it also gives you who somebody is, what the business about, what they're influential in, who their significant other is, where they went to school, where they work. And ultimately, these are all clues for you to understand who somebody is, what their business is about, that you could then use to develop intimacy and trust, and then get them to open up to you about their business issues, which as a professional, you can then solve. In the old days, we did that by going in somebody's office and looking at their walls, look at the books they read, the degree of the school they went to, the knickknacks they collect, to find areas of commonality, the 5 F's of life, family, friend, food, fun, and fellowship, to share that with that person so that you then build that intimacy and trust and can find ways to add value. And I'll give you an example. I'm walking in your digital footprint right now, and there is a message from Christian Cardos. And I basically hover on Christian's name in your Twitter stream, and it basically tells me, everything I need to know about Christian. I actually know Kristen from way back. She's big in the community manager.
Works with Convince and Convert, Jay Bear and the gang.
Does, yeah. And in that tweet, there was this guy, Daniel Lemon.
Daniel Lemon just worked over at StoryCo with him a couple of weeks ago in LA.
So I hovered on Daniel's record. I see that he follows me, but I don't know anything about Daniel. And so Nimble automatically built this beautiful record that tells me that he's the co-author of Talk Triggers, that he basically is the head of brand and consulting at Jay Bears, and he lives in Los Angeles. So now I can follow him and then build a record for him by just clicking that live profile, and I could basically schedule a follow-up or basically walk in his footprint, add value to his conversation, so he'll actually call me. And I think networking off of your prospect customers and influencers networks is a great way to dance in their digital trail to find net new people to connect to, because people talk to people like themselves. And Infusionsoft wouldn't have any idea what I'm talking about because their CRM is an afterthought that was strapped onto the marketing system, and it's just a dead record that you type everything in, and there's no way to segment off of who somebody is, what their business is about in order to message to people. And if you can't segment your outreaches so that you can send smaller subsets that are one-to-one relevant, authentic messages so people actually feel like you're communicating with them, you'll never break through the clutter in life.
Mm-hmm. So your unique value prop in one way too, if you look at the back end, is you're changing this Excel data morgue into a living library of contacts that enrich your relationships, enrich your business, and enrich your life.
And not only that, but we don't just do it from your spreadsheet. We do it from all the places where you're hiding your contacts in the silos. So today, most people never touch their QuickBooks contacts or NetSuite or whatever accounting system you use, Xero. Imagine if you could take the siloed contacts in sales, marketing, customer service, accounting, and social media, centralize them into a system, enrich them with people and company data, and then begin to look at the DNA of the people that you sell to the most, to find new ones that are already within your network, or to figure out what is the persona that you need to reach out to. But most importantly, the easiest people to sell to are the people you've already sold to. There's a gold mine in your contacts that you already have sold to. Most people don't do anything with that. And that is also one of our unique selling positions, is that we build your CRM automatically from the contacts you already have strewn around, hiding in little boxes around your life.
So one thing that I learned from Christopher Lockhead's fabulous book called Play Bigger. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that, on category design. He's in Silicon Valley and has done some really amazing work with tech companies over the years, and has this brilliant approach to identifying and designing your category. So you are talking about, your network is your net worth and how you automatically do this. And even customer relationship management might be a bit of a misnomer, because people already have maybe an embedded story of what they think that is, and it may not be correct because what they've experienced in the past is more cumbersome customer reporting management. Mm-hmm. What I hear with Nimble and you, and what I've seen in the work you've done with your workbook, is CRM could be actually changed to, hold it, wait for it, camaraderie resource management. and I mean that because of we're not just reaching out in cold calls and bothering people, but are connecting with people on their terms and helping them find what they are trying to accomplish, to literally build not a relationship, but camaraderie among those two groups. And it could be mano a mano, person to person, or it could be within a work group, in a larger scale. But the idea is, what does you make customer relationship, but what you make happen is camaraderie among your contacts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, that's really what life is about, is building comrades, right? Relationships. And it's hard to do in our overconnected, overcommunicated world. There's a Dunbar limit, and you can only manage 100 to 200 people in your head at one time. That's what this researcher Dunbar in England.
I think he landed on 150, isn't it? And I've seen that in some other. Once you hit 151, you're screwed. It's a hot mess. you gotta figure that out.
Yeah. And to maintain a relationship, you need to nurture it. You need to reach out and connect with them, and ideally, occasionally go out and add value to that person. And I think that if you're trying to use Gmail, G Suite, Office, or even a CRM to do it, it's not as effective. And so I think we all need a tool that helps us to be more nimble with our relationships, which is funny. The reason we called it goldmine is that I believe your network is your goldmine, and that the more work you do in the goldmine, the more ore you can pull out. And that, that's a great brand name. And Nimble, I envision that, we all admire small businesses, how they're nimble. We call them nimble. And there's a picture of IBM dancing like an elephant in a nimble way. But then also Fred Astaire, or really, think of any great dancer. Wouldn't it be great to be able to dance like Fred Astaire through your life, right? To be just elegant and easy with the motions that you do with people, ultimately to be top of mind, not as a salesperson, but as somebody who can help them.
Mm-hmm. So in working through this, you have a lot going on in Nimble. The CRM world is confusing at best as well. How has this process helped you do a better job of more focusing what Nimble stands for, or at least how you communicate what Nimble stands for?
Well, that's kind of the process that we're working out with you, because we're blazing new trails. We're creating a new category, which is a blend of contact management, CRM, sales intelligence, and sales enablement, email tracking, or marketing. And so we need to synthesize that into something digestible that people can associate with something they're familiar with, but yet see it's uniquely different and be able to make a decision that, yes, that's right for me.
Yeah, there's always the rub, isn't it? So
yeah,
we're going to hop over a few steps in the story cycle process. And I always like to get to number 9, chapter number 9. And this is the moral of your story, where your beliefs and values really come together. And it's captured in a line that says, Nimble exists to help people do what? And it's beyond helping Nimble make money. But you are on this planet. Nimble exists to help people do what?
I think to build enriched relationships, because ultimately, if you build enriched relationships at scale, that these people will naturally want to help you achieve your dreams. Because if you're focused on helping and serving and growing others, like I said, service is the new sales. People naturally want to help you, and so I think of traditional CRMs as bagging and tagging, and that Nimble's really here to help you grow by helping other people grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does, because when you do this purpose, the brand purpose, what it's all about, it's always much greater than just what you sell and making people happen in people's lives. So this idea of enriching people's lives, Nimble exists to help people enrich the important relationships in their lives. Something along those lines. So it happens not only in the SaaS offering that you sell, but you can also use that then in building your people internally and saying, this is not just about selling Nimble, but it's about how are you enriching your own relationships in life? And a brand like yours, then, very purpose-driven, can use that ethos to help even your people grow in different ways. How are you enriching your relationships outside of the office? How are you enriching your relationships in your own health and habits and nutrition? How are you enriching literally your relationship to life in general? Are you doing the things you love to do and that sort of thing? So it becomes a much grander, greater ethos than just in what you do. But in what you do, it is expressed in what you stand for, this enrichment.
Yeah. So what we wrote in here after going through this workshop process with you, and thanks so much for the structure and the coaching, is Nimble exists to enrich people's lives via relationships to help them achieve their dreams and goals.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I love about that is it not only speaks directly to your product offering, but to so much more. So you can talk to folks in your team about things, and how are you doing this outside of the office here as well? So,
and if you think about it, just as I said that Goldmine was for the whole company to have all of its contacts that the whole company connects to in it, so that everybody works together, communicating and collaborating as a team, that Nimble isn't just for prospects and customers. It's for your entire constituency that you touch on a daily basis. And that includes your team members. It includes all the people you do business with. And it includes your personal life, because I think that personal and business blend. Park, you and I are close friends. Even though we don't know each other that well, we've shared enough intimacy and personal life stories and joys and passions that I feel like I know you, and we have a deeper connection than that of a business relationship. And I think that all business relationships probably in there if you're doing them right. But you can't just think about your business persona and business relationship, because your personal persona has to be reflected in your business persona, because that's how you humanize yourself and people really connect with you. And then you should be nurturing your personal relationships as well, because life isn't just about business, and that Nimble is not just a business tool, it's really a life tool.
I love that. And that's why I call it not a customer relationship management system, but a camaraderie resource management system. Jon, thank you. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners? You've built two really amazing companies, and you are driven by not only success of your customers, but also how it impacts their lives and your life.
Well, Park, I went to Ireland last summer, and before going to Ireland, I read this book called Ireland, and it's really, they tell the story of Ireland through a storyteller who travels from town to town telling stories. You aware of the Irish Storytellers?
Oh yeah, but not that book. It sounds like a great one.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to it. It's called Ireland, and so this person would go from town to town, and somebody in the town would host them at their house, and then everybody from the town would come in over there, and they'd gather around the fireplace, and he'd tell the stories. And the stories were the common stories about, how Ireland was created, and this, that, and the other thing. And if you think about it, human beings have been living through storytelling forever. And today we do that on TV and radio and social and the internet. But back in the day, is from one person to another, or to one person to many. And I think that everybody is a storyteller, and that for you to build a brand today, you basically ideally need to align the promises you make to the experiences that you deliver. And that's how you build a gold mine. But more importantly, if you could tell stories and get other people to tell those stories at scale, that's how you build. That's how I built Goldmine, and that's how I built Nimble. But even somebody like me, who I consider myself a pretty good storyteller and brand creator and marketer, could benefit from the process that you've created, because you create this structure that helps you to synthesize a story that is not only more digestible, but that puts the prospect and customer at the center of the story to see how they're going to transform from the products and services that you're delivering, and that you ultimately become this guide, this wizard, this champion of theirs. And they don't see you as a salesperson; they see you really as their hero, if you will.
Yeah, you become their mentor or guide, and that's the position every brand should hold. Yeah.
So I just want to heartily recommend you and your process. If anybody's listening to this, you are just patient and capable of facilitating a conversation that helps derive this in an easy way.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, Jon. We've worked on it for many years, and I have so much fun. I suppose just like you do with Nimble, when you are out there and you feel a bit like a rock star when someone comes up to you and said, "Oh my God, you've totally changed my business and therefore have changed my life." When you get those kinds of responses like this, it does make you feel like you're in the right place doing the right things for the right people.
Amen.
Wow. Well, thank you, Jon, so much for being here, and thank you all for listening to this edition of the Business of Story. Again, if you know of someone, friend, family, colleague that can benefit from Jon's wisdom and would like to learn more about Nimble, firsthand, please share this episode with them. And of course, if I can be of service to you, and if you are ready to get to work on your brand story, to clarify your story, amplify your impact, and simplify your life, go to businessofstory.com, download your DIY workbook, and get after it. Believe me, it will be the best $45 you ever invested in getting your brand story straight. I appreciate you listening, and I want you to join us again next week when we will have another marvelous story artist on like Jon. You're in the business of story, and until then, please remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks for listening.